members there, and you may begin any time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many of you may be aware, I'm David Nelson. I'm an investigator on the Energy and Commerce Committee staff. With me on my right are Kevin Barstow, and on my left, Richard Wilfong. They and several other members of the majority staff, and Krista Carpenter of the minority staff, have been investigating questions of food safety for the committee for the last 4 months. As part of the inquiry, we've reviewed thousands of pages, actually tens of thousands of pages, some of which were delivered only last week, of documents. We've conducted numerous interviews of industry experts, current and former FDA employees, per your instructions. We visited numerous ports, FDA laboratories, and field offices around the country. Minority staff participated in most of these interviews and site visits. Chairman Stupak, you asked us to focus on 3 critical areas of food safety that were raised by the testimony during the April 24th hearing of this committee. First was the extent to which FDA is protecting Americans from contaminated food imports. Second, the extent to which FDA's proposed reorganization of its field operations, including FDA's decision to shut down, or proposal to shut down, 17 of its 13 laboratories, is consistent with the agency's charge to ensure the safety of the nation's food supply. Finally, you ask us to explore the extent to which FDA's continued use of voluntary guidelines are adequate to ensure the safety of the nation's food supply. During the course of that inquiry, we examined a number of products and FDA's regulation thereof: domestic and imported leafy greens, peanut butter, imported vegetable proteins like gluten, imported seafood, and imported toothpaste containing a deadly chemical, diethylene glycol. The preliminary findings confirm the results of the subcommittee's April hearing. The FDA has failed to adequately respond to increased imports of foreign food products. Recent accounts of tainted imports from China provide additional evidence. Simply stated, the FDA lacks sufficient resources and authority to ensure food safety, and legislation will be needed to correct these deficiencies. The current proposal to change FDA's structure and management would appear to exacerbate the current food safety situation. Lastly, FDA's current regulatory approach, which relies upon voluntary guidelines for most domestic and imported foods, appears inadequate in responding to the changing food industry. I only have time to make a very few points that are made in the written testimony, Mr. Chairman. So let me just concentrate on a few. Our review of the operations in San Francisco revealed that it is physically impossible for that office to perform more than a cursory review of most imports. The San Francisco office has 4 entry reviewers to oversee 4,000 entry lines per day. A typical reviewer's day involves examining 600 food entries, 300 medical device entries, 25 reagent entries, and 25 drug entries on a computer screen. That's about 1 entry every 30 seconds. That's the time they have to decide whether or not they even recommend sending an inspector out to physically look at the goods, or to take a sample. One of the problems that we found at every lab every lab we traveled to, was the unverified reliance by FDA on the use of private laboratory tests to release suspect imports. FDA permits importers to take possession of even highly suspect goods and arrange for their testing by private laboratories. Import alerts that contain the instruction, detention without physical examination, does not mean detain in the ordinary use of that word. It means allow delivery to the importer. The importer then has to contract with a private lab, which FDA does not oversee, does not license, does not audit, and has no legal authority to direct importers to specific labs or away from specific labs, regardless what the record of those labs are. If those laboratories provide a negative finding of pathogens or toxins in 5 consecutive shipments, then that exporter is removed from the import alert, and the OASIS system assures that all future shipments from that exporter are going to enter the United States without any further testing. Time up. Mr. Chairman, the rest of the report goes on and deals with the problems with the OASIS system, deficiencies we've found in at least the enforcement of country of origin regulations, the seafood problems that are especially problematic, the carbon monoxide being used to import as atmosphere around imported fish was particularly troubling. Some 20% of the exports into the United States, the imports into the United States in San Francisco, coming in these atmospheres were found to be disguising decomposed fish. Now, despite the fact that that was the record in San Francisco and we confirmed it to a certain extent in New York, FDA nonetheless in 2001 determined that consumers would be able to purchase fish that was made to look fresher than it probably is in those atmospheres. And in 2004, it said it was okay for meat. The written testimony contains a lot about the proposed reorganization of the field staff, which I'll be glad to answer any questions about, as will my colleagues. We don't have time to highlight those here.